And then argue to what level?
Well, to the level, whatever is necessary, quite frankly, because look,
that's a hard sell.
No, but look, here's where I'm going to
be more precise than that.
Well, I'm not going to give you an exact, dollar figure here.
Well, the question is to accept an increase in foreign aid from less than 1% of GDP to 3 to 5% of GDP.
No, but I think you could do that by explaining the types of things we're going to invest in. I mean, a lot of people think, and with some justification, that some of our foreign assistance programs don't work. And part of the reason why they feel that way is because our investments in some of these programs are spotty. Now, I'm going to disagree with Senator Biden a little bit on giving the Bush administration any credit, because the fact of the matter is, while they come up with proposals like the Millennium Challenge, which is a good thing, they kind of rob Peter to pay Paul. I just came back from a trip to Africa where all the people that I met with in the development field said, please stop cutting our core development programs. Please stop cutting monies to help child survival, to help agriculture, to help infrastructure, to help with all these hunger and education. And I think that to the extent that we can make the case that investing our resources smartly in foreign assistance that actually help lift people out of poverty, not only is the right thing to do morally, and it is something that the United States of America should want to be associated with, but it is also the right thing to do in our own self-interest. It is in our security interest, quite frankly, to have people believe that we are on their side, and that's where this Bush administration has failed so miserably.
And you think that argument will, regardless of the precise dollar figure, convince Americans, as is really the point of the question here, that it is a worthy thing to raise maybe double or triple or more?
I do.
Foreign aid?
Look, the Bush administration has used terror as the justification to increase, every military budget and every, so-called security budget, whether it's justified or not. I think we can turn the table a little bit to simply say we've tried their way. It hasn't worked. We want a military second to none, without a doubt. But the bottom line is that it is in our security interest to try to help tackle some of the world's biggest problems, whether it's poverty or hunger or disease or helping people deal with natural disasters. That is in our interest.
Representative Smith.
If I could, there are four arguments, but I'd really emphasize the fourth. I mean, the first three are fairly practical. Jim made a couple of them. Certainly global health matters to all of us. Diseases spread very quickly. If you have a world with, bad drinking water and edible food, people in poverty, disease spreads. There's the economic argument. 2.7 billion people living on less than $2 a day can't participate in capitalism and can't help us grow. And then there is the stability argument. If you have that many people in poverty with literally no hope in the world, they are far more likely to follow madmen like Osama bin Laden. Those are the three practical arguments. But frankly, if you want to convince the American people, I don't think you're going to get them with the practical arguments on foreign aid. I think what we have to do is we have to make the moral argument that it is wrong on a very profound level that 2.7 billion people in this world live on less than $2 a day. Particularly wrong because there is something that we can do about it. And it doesn't even cost that much money. There's a lot of different programs on health, on education, on clean drinking water, and it's all out there. I think you have to make the moral argument to the American people. If you have a value system, whatever that value system is, and we are supposed to be a predominantly Christian nation. I am a Christian, and the basis of it is help your neighbor. Who's your neighbor? Anybody you can help. I think you have to make that moral argument, and that's what I've seen Senator Obama do more than once. That is what would motivate people.
Any other candidate?
Just closing, if you would try to make the practical argument, at the end of the day, people are going to say, yeah, I kind of see that, but I'd really rather have more money for my health care, for my education, for my roads.
So which candidate here makes a different or more persuasive case?
Right. Chris Dodd, the reason I support Chris, and I hope I reflect the way he feels, but if I'm accurate in judging what Chris Dodd has done over his over two decades of service. One, for developing countries, he will talk about capacity building and strengthening institutions, because I think he's learned you can't talk to these developing countries about helping and then not do the walk. And so you have to build the capacity in those countries, and that principally means helping them establish those democratic institutions that let them have the type of infrastructure that lets the middle class develop. To our economic partners, he says access, a fair access on a two-way street. so that no one takes advantage of the other. And to our adversaries, to the degree that you could talk in terms of foreign assistance to our adversaries, he says, look, I'm confident I can talk to you. I've got experience that goes back 20 some odd years, and I feel that we are a strong nation and we can talk to anyone, and we'll respond as necessary because we have the strength to respond as necessary as well. So if we can make progress, there's a carrot. And if not, we know how to respond.
Anybody else?
Yes. Well, this is actually a question where I know what Senator Edwards thinks, so I would like to seize this opportunity, and happily it is what I think as well. Another generation remembers very well how much goodwill we built in Europe from the effort of war reconstruction from the Marshall Plan. But you don't have to think back 60 years. In just the last 2 or 3 years in what we did in tsunami relief, we have changed the opinion of societies that are far less predisposed to be our friends than European societies. Indonesia, polling has shown that 60% of the Indonesian people think better of the United States because of what we did in tsunami relief. Indonesia is an impoverished Muslim country in which Al-Qaeda is very much a presence. And we have won a great deal of goodwill among the Indonesian people because of what we did for tsunami relief. If we work with our allies, our traditional allies, if we work with Great Britain, the NATO countries, Japan, Israel, to try to address global poverty, which is, all of us have given different examples, but there is no doubt that around the world, poverty is crushing. And there are many societies in which there seems to be no hope. We will not have to proceed in the world as the Bush administration has proceeded, in which military power appears to be their only asset, their only approach. And when the only thing you've got is a hammer, you see a world filled with nails.
Okay, let's move it over here. We're going to jump in on behalf of
Governor Richardson.
Governor Richardson.
The thing that I think Governor Richardson would do, and the first thing that's different than the rest of the candidates, is I think his experience. And in his 14 years in the Congress, Governor Richardson traveled internationally, was a NATO parliamentary delegate,
All
was
these
involved in
candidates
international
have
issues.
traveled internationally.
Yeah, okay. How about being ambassador to the United Nations? That's the next thing I was going to, Frank. No, none of the others have served in that capacity. None of the others have sat down with the various bad guys in the world and negotiated with them and got really concrete things done. For example, Governor Richardson and President Clinton, Bill Clinton, used to say this. He says, I send Governor Richardson to these countries because the bad guys seem to like him. Well, the fact
That's a heck of an endorsement.
yeah, it is. But the fascinating thing is here he's able to go. You talk, Frank, you talk engagement. He's able to go to these countries and sit down with Saddam Hussein and Castro and the North Koreans. We just had in New Mexico a Green Chili Summit where the North Koreans came to New Mexico because they couldn't talk to the Bush administration. I mean, he has the ability to engage, and the thing he's called for is a Marshall Plan for the Middle East, the MCC that Jim talked about, the Millennium Corporation. You put that $5 billion a year that President Bush said, but you don't take it from the other areas. I mean, that's what needs to be done. And he's also called for something similar to what President Kennedy did of an Alliance for Progress, Javier, for Latin America. So he has a broad global look at this, and I think would take the most aggressive approach.
Senator Biden.
Thank you, Frank. Look, I think Senator Biden would say we need to do two things. First, it is about leadership. When you look back at the last 6 years, what he said is that President Bush is not going to be blamed and remembered for the mistakes he's made, because everyone makes mistakes. It's the opportunities he squandered.